Well, hi, everybody, and good evening to you, no matter where you are watching on this Tuesday night. We appreciate you joining us. This is our 2020 virtual PIT, the Portsmouth Invitational Tournament NBA Draft Preview. And I know it's hard to believe that the NBA Draft is tomorrow night. It's causing quite a bit of confusion for us to figure out the schedule this year. But normally we'd be talking about this in the summer. Normally we would have been coming out of an April long week of exciting basketball action at the Portsmouth Invitational Tournament. But we're going to do it this way because we got a fun show planned for you. And no matter what platform you're watching on, you can comment below, whether it's on YouTube or Facebook, comment below, and I'll see some of your comments, and we'll be able to put some questions up as well. Coming up over this next hour, I'm going to be joined by PIT Chairman Mike Morris and legendary NBA scouts Ryan Blake and Chris Ekstrand, as they discuss the PIT class of 2020 and their chances of making an NBA team. We're really going to get very interested in numerous ways, including talking to Brett and Mike Brungard about the NBA body in the combine, the importance of having your body and everything ready, the strength that goes behind it, and the physical challenges of making that jump from college to the NBA as well. And I know a lot of either colleagues or friends from the NBA circuit over my years traveling with the Dallas Mavericks or the Los Angeles Lakers are joining us tonight as well, and we appreciate you joining us. One of the things about the Portsmouth Invitational Tournament, if you've never been or you don't know that much about it, you can look it up. It is historical. It's all about tradition. Watch this, and you'll see that even more.
This kicks off the pre-draft process. You have the top 64 seniors in the country actually playing games.
Some people downplay it. Some people don't even know where Portsmouth is on the map. But when you get here, you know.
What the teams look at is they know it's a reputable source to find hidden talent.
Dennis Rodman, Scottie Pippen, Jeremy Lin, Derek Fisher, and a lot of guys in between.
This process here at Portsmouth, you're in front of 30 NBA teams, overseas teams. This circle is where everyone wants to be.
It's just a culmination of all your hard work paying off and all into one weekend.
This is your money. This is your car. Whether you drive a $20,000 car or you drive a $60,000 car. Whether you get tailor-made clothes or you'll be riding clothes off the rack. Some of you guys right now, you're killing yourself.
You have agents trying to contact you. You have coaches telling you what to do. You have friends telling you what to do.
If I can come in and do well and show some people what I got, I think great things will happen for me.
For a player to get to that next level, you have to deliver that performance almost every night.
I want to grab this thing by the horns and then go in there and fight.
Every player out there thinks that they're an NBA player or wants to be an NBA player. And I think each player deserves the right to be there because it is their dreams.
You know, whether he gets drafted or not, you've given him the shot. That's all he can ask for.
You get here and you show that you're a player, then you're in the
Well, if that doesn't fire you up, I don't know what will, because that was some fantastic basketball action, and that's what you see each and every year. And I hope we're all able to gather live and together again in April and see each other. One of the men who will be in charge of that is going to join me right now. I welcome in the new chairman of the tournament, Mike Morris. And as I welcome in, I remind everyone that Mike originally is from Hanover, PA, but he came to Portsmouth in '96 and has lived and worked there and served on the board of directors for the tournament since 1996 on the player selection committee, the vice chairman as well, and now the new chairman. Mike, thanks so much. I'm sure you're going to enjoy your position.
Thanks, Dave. It's an honor for me to be chairman and an honor to be really part of this prestigious tournament. It's such a great thing, and I really consider it an honor to be even involved in it.
Well, what I've been amazed at is when I've attended is just to see all the experts around you, Mike, and we're going to introduce some in right now. We are going to welcome in a man who has helped direct scouting services for the NBA for many, many years alongside his father, Marty, since 1996. Ryan Blake began his scouting career at the age of 17 under the tutelage of his father, Marty, as well as other legendary coaches and scouts. And he's been doing so much as a member of the United States Basketball Writers Association, Writers Guild of America, and writes for many extensive journals and publications out there as well. Ryan, thanks for joining us tonight. Are you excited about a little basketball talk?
Of course. I mean, it's that time of the year, and we get to talk about Portsmouth and the draft. Good evening.
Well, we're going to get into some of the players, and I appreciate you two gentlemen joining me, but we have another one. We've got, we want to welcome in Chris Ekstrand as well. Chris has worked for the NBA for 30 years, first as an employee in the communications group, and then as a consultant in the NBA legal and basketball operations departments as well. He first attended the PIT in 1995 and celebrated his 25th year there in 2019. Chris, you've seen a lot of players and you've enjoyed a lot of activity. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Dave. I'm really looking forward to being with this group.
Well, guys, I want you all to, you've seen so much of the history. You know how that all kind of stitches its way together. Each of you, share a little bit about the history of this tournament.
Well, let me start going way back to the first one in 1953. This was an idea of a couple gentlemen who lived in Portsmouth and played in the Adult Recreation League. After the end of the season, they went to the Parks and Recreation Department and said, hey, why don't we have an all-comers tournament? Whoever comes, it's all winner take all. And that's what they did. And so they held this tournament in local armory. And that first year, there's a team that came over from Norfolk, and they had a friend of theirs who was a pretty good college player at Duke. And so they invited him to come back and play in the tournament. So the first college player that played in the tournament was this guy named Charles Lefty Drizel. And he played in 53 and 54. And from there, every team started going after a college player to come and be their ringer. And so it was kind of fascinating to see how this kind of developed. And it started with the very first tournament when somebody tried to bring a ringer and they brought Lefty Drizel. It escalated from there. Then in the 60s, you got them bringing in Rick Barry. And then you got them bringing in Earl of Pearl Monroe from Winston-Salem State. And then you got to bring in Dave Cowens from Florida State. And then you got, it just kept going. And then finally, the number one draft pick, John Lucas, ends up playing in the tournament. And so in the 60s and 70s, 50s, 60s, and 70s, that's how it went. You brought your own guy. You could try to find a ringer somewhere, and whoever had enough money to bring somebody here, that's how it rolled. And so that's how the tournament really got where it is. And then in the mid-70s, a committee was formed to try to even things out because it had gotten out of hand. One guy was getting whoever he could get because he had more money. And so in the 70s, the current format was created where we invite 64, we divide them up in teams of 8 players to a team, as evenly as we can, and let them play against each other. So that's kind of how we got to where we are today.
Ryan?
Yeah, going back, I love the 70s. That's about the time my father, who was working for both the NBA and the ABA, he started going to the PIT. And he started contacting like Bobby Ferry, who was the GM of the Bullets, to come down and check it out. And then he basically told all the teams and said, you got to come down. You got to see the good players and how well it was run. And, his specialty back in the day was trying to find those unknown players. Players he invited to Portsmouth like Sigma, Stockton, Pippen, Dennis Rodman, even Jeff Foster, who kind of went from obscurity to NBA careers. But even recently, we've had And in the past decade or so, guys like Jeremy Lin, Robert Covington, Jimmy Butler, Derek White, Rashawn Holmes from Bowling Green, a local product, Kyle O'Quinn from Norfolk. It's just the trend has always, it's kind of roller coaster, but the basic essence of Portsmouth has always been there because it's one of the true unique events in basketball.
Chris, you've seen plenty of them.
I think one of my favorite things about the tournament is a lot of these players who get to senior year nowadays in the current era are told that, you're a little bit small for your position, not quite athletic enough, not tall enough, this, that, or the other thing. They're all missing something. But we have guys who come in and they play their hearts out. And there's a couple different avenues now to get to the NBA. Back in the old days, if you didn't make the NBA and you got cut, you just go get a job. I mean, that's the way things were back then. Nowadays, guys have the NBA G League, which, every team now, except for 2, I believe 28 out of 30 have a G League affiliate. And so the PIT players, if they don't make the NBA on the first go round, can go try to make it through the G League. Also, in the last 20 or so years, we've had numerous representatives from the European League teams come in, and they're looking for players too. And a lot of the players from the PIT who don't get a chance to go into the NBA are now in Europe. And if you look at the top European leagues, some of those players are the top players in Europe. I mean, Kyle Hines will never go down as playing a minute in the NBA, a guy from UNC Greensboro, but he's won more titles, European championships, and he's a legend in Europe, and he's still playing. Luke Sikma, Jack Sikma's son, has been playing over there for years and is one of the best players in Europe. And these guys have that winning gene. Kyle Hines changes teams every 2-3 years. Every time he goes somewhere new, guess what? That's the team that wins gets into the European Final Four. So it's amazing how many opportunities there are for players now, not just to go directly from the PIT to the NBA, but through other avenues.
Guys, I think we talk about players, but one of the things that we noticed there in the video, and I saw in person, you're developing coaches out of this as well.
Yeah, that's what's interesting. That started a little over 10 years ago. As the NBA approached us and said, we have some guys that used to be players who would like to get into coaching, and we said, well, let's work something out here where we could bring them in and allow them to do some coaching along with the coaches we already had. And it's worked really well. It's been a good for these players to hear from someone who's been there and can give them some expertise, some knowledge, just some mentorship.
One of the things that I thought was very interesting is that some of the guys who've come in who are former NBA greats finish their playing career and then come coach at the PIT, they were told by their agent when they were coming out of college, well, you can bypass the PIT. You're good enough where you're going to go in the first round and you can skip this. And these guys, after they coach in the event and they see what it is, they come to us afterwards and say, wow, I would have played in this. This is great. This is great competition. And, the kids are trying so hard and, everybody's upbeat and, they're all looking for pro basketball careers. So they say years later, boy, if I'd have known, I would have played in this event. It's a great event.
Ryan, I really think it helps too. You guys have had such a great positioning, being so early in the combine season as well.
Yeah, I mean, it helps, most definitely. It helps to get those college seniors in. I think it's a huge benefit for them, especially, over the past, I would say 7 or 8 years, we're getting the stronger seniors that are coming to play. They're finally realizing that, I got to open up more doors. And what we were finding is a lot of the players were posturing or through their agents, getting bad advice and not knowing, because it doesn't matter what college senior comes into this, they don't know what to expect. They don't have the intel. And so when they're getting that advice from the agent just wants to sign them, whether they get into the NBA or whether they go overseas. So we ended up putting together a letter, I started grinding out some facts and statistics, and we found like 9 to 19 kids were getting that chose not to go to the PIT tournament. They were getting not getting into the combine and not getting drafted. And we put together this. We sent it out to the players before, during their invitations, and we found that they now realize, and they finally say, you know what, I'm not going to be the person that says, hey, GM, I'm going to be the guy that just let me know when I'm in the semifinals of the interview, and then I'll take the job. But you get a lot more out of Portsmouth. It's not only that, but the testing is important. That Brett will tell you that 98% through study, at the times that you do the testing, you do better on the second one. You get your first interview. So it's also an experience thing, but it opens up more doors.
It's amazing. And guys, I know a lot of people, they start getting excited about players that they've watched. So let's talk about some names, and let's move into that segment right now. Guys, start talking about who would have been or the top players to come out of the Portsmouth Invitational Tournament this year.
Light it up, Chris.
Okay, thanks, Ryan.
Give me your first two.
Okay, two of the players that we were very excited about seeing at the PIT were going to be Desmond Bain, who's a big shooting guard from TCU, a terrific outside shooter, and Grant Riller from Charleston, who's a combo guard and probably handles the ball a little bit more than Bain, but a guy who loves to drive to the basket and doesn't mind the contact. And those two players are players that we felt strongly would excel in Portsmouth. And also, I do expect to hear their names called on draft night tomorrow night.
All right, Chris, I'm gonna give you three, and then you follow me up there. So one of the guys that I liked is Sam Merrill from Utah State, a 6'5" combo who could run the point, who could play on the wing. A guy that's one of the best shooters in college basketball, can light it up from deep, create off the dribble in the half court set. He's definitely a leader, not only vocally, but he gets a lot of respect from opponents, coaches. He's a player that you want to have the ball in his hands at the end of the game, not just to hit the shot, but he made a lot of great last second passes as well. He's a 20.4 assist guy in the last 2 years. That was his averages, and he averaged 42% from behind the arc for his entire career at Utah State. Now, one of the other, as we go on up the ladder to big men, I was a big fan of Nathan Knight at William and Mary, a 6'10", 245-pound power forward. He was the Lou Henson mid-major player of the year. He was the conference player of the year and defensive player of the year. He averaged 21.5 points per game, 10.5 rebounds, and 1.5 assists. Now, he's a guy that not only can rebound, screen, but he's going to be a inside-outside threat. He's improved his shooting. And for a guy that got double-teamed all the time, he averaged 3 3-point attempts per game. He's got great athleticism and vertical spacing. Now, my Knight, let's say, in the center spot, or just put him in the post. We got Mama Diakite from Virginia, another 6 power forward. He can just change the game on the defensive end. He's a shooting has improved. He could sort of be like a Bam Adebayo type of player, rim protect. He's kind of unplugged, meaning that like he does all the little things, which are the important things that none of the other.
I think we've lost
Chris,
Ryan.
Hit me up, baby.
Okay. Yeah, I like all of Ryan's picks. I'm gonna throw out two more names, and then maybe we can get Mike back in here. But Skylar Mays from LSU is one of these guys that people wanted to count out because he's not an outstanding athlete in terms of jumping and running. And guys like that, people say, well, if he's not a great athlete, how could he play in the NBA? But every year at LSU, he just got better, tougher, started refining his skills, started to become more of a playmaker. And he's also just a handful. When he gets downhill going towards the rim, he's going to score or get fouled most times. So Skylar Mays is one of these guys where NBA people told me at the beginning of the season, well, he might be in line for a two-way contract. And by the end of the season, when I went to a game, they were saying, I think he's kind of worked his way up from that. So he's one guy to keep an eye on. And another guy that I really like, and I think all of us like if he could just stay healthy, is Killian Tilly from Gonzaga, a big man, a European guy who can pass the ball. He can shoot the ball on the perimeter, and he's got a lot to like. I mean, he's a very intelligent player, and he's got a lot of the skills that you want big men to have now, who can handle the ball in the low post or the high post. But so if Tilly can stay healthy, he could play a long NBA career. That's always been the question mark with him.
Yeah, I agree with what both of us said. Those are the top guys. There are a few other guys that I was kind of curious to see. I thought they could possibly, make a name for themselves while they played in the PIT. A guy like Lamar Stevens from Penn State, he's got potential. Could he do it against that caliber of talent? Maybe a Yuli Childs from BYU. Put up a lot of points. Could he handle that? Could he do that against bigger guys? And then also I was looking at Trey Tinkle and said, okay, he has quite a heritage there. Can he do it? And so those are guys who probably aren't going to be drafted, but may have a chance at some point, 3-4 years from now, to maybe make a team. And so I was curious to see how they compete with those guys you guys just mentioned.
There's Kevin giving a shout out there. Is Cassius Winston on the radar?
Well, Winston is a player who, it was made known to us when we were in the invitation process that he probably would not play in Portsmouth. Now, Winston is a funny player because, 25 years ago, the guy would have been a certain draft pick. But 25 years ago, the first round wasn't almost completely populated with freshmen and sophomores, which is what we have now with a few international guys sprinkled in. So Winston will probably go maybe in the late second round. He's one of these guys with a tremendous, file of accomplishments behind him at the college level. But at the same time, the NBA people aren't really sure about his size, his athleticism. So there's some questions there, but he's a very good player. We certainly would have loved to have had him in Portsmouth, but it seemed like that wasn't in the cards.
Hey, can you guys, Chris, maybe you, Ryan, obviously, and Mike as well, you kind of alluded to it there, Chris. Is there the trend for some of the guys, the stronger, the higher prospects, is just to stay and choosing to stay at the PIT?
Well, I think what you're seeing now is the last 5 years in the NBA draft, there are only about 3 to 4 seniors in the entire first round. So to my way of thinking, unless you're one of those elite guys, you probably should play in the PIT, because if somebody says, well, we feel like you're a second round, or we feel you're in the 40s or the 50s even, why wouldn't that player come to Portsmouth and try to play his way up? I'll tell you one guy who was told that he was in the 40s in mock drafts before he played in Portsmouth, and that was a guy named Jimmy Butler from Marquette University. He was never the first option during his entire career at Marquette. And, lo and behold, today he signed a max contract in the NBA. So you're talking about one of the elite players in the whole league. And this happens, more than not, where guys are overlooked. They have a certain role that's well-defined on their college team. They come to Portsmouth, they spread their wings. They show themselves to be a little bit more than what the NBA teams thought they could be.
Yeah, I think what we try to get out there to the players is that, listen, first round is guaranteed money. And if you're not projected and you want to do everything that you can to get guaranteed money, to get into that first round and to open up those doors, because it's pointless to say, hey, I'm just going to play here or there. You're doing everything you can to get that job interview, to get in front of the decision makers, to allow them to know, allow them to get to know you.
Yeah, Ron touched on this a little earlier, but we've seen the cycle as well. There was a time where almost everybody came, and then there was a period of 10 or 12 years there where a lot of seniors were thinking they were going to get drafted and chose not to. We've seen it turn again now to where most of the seniors want to play, knowing what Ryan just said. You're not going to be a first-round pick. You need to work your way there. And so we've kind of seen that evolve over the last 20 years in a little ebb and flow.
Guys, we're going to end up moving on to the combine part and the development of the body of these guys to get ready for that pro career. But I want to ask you one more thing to people that have never attended. You think about who comes, and the story and sometimes the scene is actually in the stands. I mean, there is not a team that wants to miss the ability, and there are some big name front office people watching every year there.
Yeah, I think one of the quotes we have in one of our invitation letters from Mitch Kupchak, and not just from old school people, but even the young, the new analytical people coming in and seeing the event. But you're having the GMs, decision makers. I remember when Larry Bird couldn't come down for the second year in a row, he called me and he apologized. It's also a unique event. So I think it's a little bit out of the chaos of a normal, intense combine situation when there's too much going on.
Yeah, funny story. In '96, when I got there, I walked in the door, and so as I walk in the door, the first three people I see are Jerry West, Dr. J, and Daryl Dawkins. And I go, holy cow, where am I? I've grown up with these guys, and I'm like, the first three I see are those three guys. And I'm like, this is amazing.
Yeah, one of the things I've enjoyed the last couple of years is that not only do you have the NBA intelligentsia on the scene, but a lot of times right before the game starts, you'll see somebody on the far end just try to sneak in and go sit up high. One year, it was Billy Donovan who snuck in at the last minute. And coaches, NBA head coaches, a lot of times never get to see these players in person because they're coaching during the NBA season. He snuck in at the last minute. John Calipari one year, very surreptitiously, like there was about a minute left on the clock, and there was a big blank space up in the upper tier of the bleachers. And then all of a sudden, the next time I looked in that spot, there's John Calipari there. He snuck in under the radar, didn't have to sign any autographs, but he was watching the game. So it's a lot of fun. You never know who you're going to see.
Well, guys, thanks for some of the memories, and I'm going to bring you all back later and give out some awards. What we thought or think would have been the tournament MVP for this year of the Portsmouth Invitational Tournament, the All Defensive Player, and a couple of tournament sleepers as well. So I'm going to zap you guys back into the green room, and we'll bring you back in just a little bit. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mike Morris, Ryan Blake, and Chris Ekstrand as well. I'm Dave Shore. We appreciate you joining us. You can ask your questions or post your comments right down there. We appreciate whatever platform you're joining. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel that they've gotten going as well. It's called The PIT Films, and you can do that as well. So much else goes on at the Portsmouth Invitational Tournament each year. There's a combine, there is athlete testing, and all this is so very important. And you're going to find this next segment very intriguing as well. We're going to welcome in our next guest. Brett Rungard is joining me. Mike Rungard is joining me as well. Brett, over the last 30 years, has established himself as one of America's most accomplished and premier strength and conditioning coaches. He's worked with guys like Steve Nash, Dirk Nowitzki, David Robinson, Brandon Webb, all kinds of athletes, and has served as strength and conditioning coach on many teams, including the Mavericks, the University of Washington, University of Kentucky, and others. Mike Rungard is joining us as well. Mike was the head strength and conditioning coach for the San Antonio Spurs for 17 years. You may have thought, I've seen him before. I had seen Brett before. I traveled with Brett in Dallas. We saw Mike and the Spurs way too many times, and they were always one of the most conditioned teams out there. So he continues to train championship athletes as well, inducted into the USA Strength Coaches Hall of Fame, and currently the CEO for Proof Athletic Training. And Brett, you are with BAM testing, which is a very, very important element. Tell me the combine part of what you guys do with all these guys that go to the PIT tournament.
Well, basically, Dave, we've tried to standardize their combine process across all the levels of basketball, from the NBA to Portsmouth to Euro Camp, Euro League, to our BAM Pro Days with the colleges. And so what we do is provide standardized testing to allow an apples to apples comparison amongst the athletes for people to evaluate certain components that they deem important. So basically, we're getting the same test wherever these athletes are. They can compare themselves, and the people who are doing the evaluation can then take this information and utilize it in whatever facet or how they want to apply it to making important decisions for these athletes.
Oh, it's huge decisions indeed. And Mike, I bring you in as what it takes for that player to make that jump to the next step.
Or how they want to apply it to making important decisions for these athletes.
Oh, it's huge decisions indeed. And I think we're getting Mike on a delay there. So
how they want to.
The strength coach is really that the NBA came to as we hear Brett talking here.
I think we're getting Mike on a Mike, delay. I'll tell you what, we're going to go back. We'll go back to you. I think you're going to need to turn your volume down there. Brett, what kind of testing do you see? What are the most important tests in the areas of concern that every single NBA team is going to be concerned about?
Well, I don't think there is one. I think they all have, we've kind of designated as a secret sauce. Everybody looks at a component, and you're moving it, by position, although the sport's becoming positionless anymore. But they're looking for certain attributes that they want to see in an athlete. And so it depends on what their analytics group has decided is an important component. But while we're waiting to get Mike back in there, we'll go a little more detail. I mean, we run 5 tests across the board, and they have a vertical jump, a max vertical jump, which is unique to testing and compared to other sports. It's one of the few places that allow an approach. And both of those are designed to measure components of power. There's a linear speed test. They have a 3/4 court sprint. They run a lane agility test. That tests movement and agility in all 4 directions. And then we have a reactive shuttle test, which I think is really cool because it measures the reactive component and also gives us some visual measurements of how they see in their vision components in reaction. So those are all then compiled in, and the results are given to the people who make the decisions. It's exactly the same combine we run at the NBA. And so, like Ryan was saying earlier, the unique thing about Portsmouth, it's the start of the combine season, and it's these kids. We love them, and they're mature 22-year-old athletes. Generally, they've gone through a great conditioning program, but a lot of them it's not integrated in the sport like it's, let's say, testing is in football. It's not as much a part of what goes on there. And so for many times, for these athletes, the first time they've been tested. And so generally, there's about a half dozen athletes that go from Portsmouth to the Chicago Rookie Combine. What we see almost without fail is these athletes who have gone through this test with us at Portsmouth test extremely well at Chicago. Their improvement levels, and that's just because they have knowledge. Their motor skills, they've adapted to it. They have a learning curve that they understand it. They're less stressed by the component than some of the other people who at Chicago are again doing it for their first time.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point, and it's really the fascinating part of it. I'm gonna bring Mike. I'm gonna bring Mike in one more time. I'm gonna try this. He may be watching on a delay.
Some of the other people who at Chicago are again doing it for their.
You're watching on a delay, Mike. So we're just not going to be able to get you.
Dave, I'm having some audio issues here. I don't know if you can hear me, but I'm getting a big echo on my end. Am I coming across okay to you right now?
We can hear you, but we're hearing ourselves back again. So we'll go ahead and just mute and remove. But Brett, no one knows Mike better than you. I will say one thing, that no one went into that San Antonio program not in and didn't come out of it in shape. I mean, there was always just a a next level for a player to make that jump, not only just to the NBA, but to certain teams that just demanded more.
Oh yeah, I mean, again, your evaluation, and again, moving from, I know Mike and I kind of talked a little bit earlier today, but moving from a 30-game college schedule to an 82-game NBA schedule is a huge step, and also, by being prepared physically for that process, it helps with the mental component, because you've seen the young people come in the 82 games, somewhere those rookies hit All-Star break. I mean, they're most of them are having a difficult time at that point. They're really readapting. And what Mike did so well was and what Pop and them have all decided was how to manage load. Right? They were managing load long before load management became this key byword was going on. They understood that process. And so they brought along those athletes with a quality load management program. And I think, too, that just helped substantially reduce injuries and drove them to be a more successful team and organization.
Brett, I got one more question for you. I sometimes give guys that base a lot of decisions on data, I give them a hard time because there's still some things that just stats don't tell. Those measurements that a guy might just be able to overachieve something that physically he may have to overcome, but still has that little extra sense about him. How do you measure that?
Well, I can remember one of my favorite stories was, I was at a combine. We did an extra combine of the NBA and came up, and Jerry West came walking across the court, the legend right there, came walking across the court, he just wasn't paying attention, interrupted one of my tests. And I said, Coach, we're testing here. He came up and he started thumping me on the chest. He says, I understand this testing, but you have a test that can test that right there, and just thumping me right in the chest. And I go, well, I said, Coach, I tell you what, I said, we got to, if you see this over time, you got your athletes and they're getting a standardized test and you can see them improve over time, then you certainly have something to base upon an athlete's willingness to work and get better at this component. You get a linear, standardized test over time. But all that being said, we've seen it in sport after sport after sport. You still got to play the game, right? You got to be a player. You got to have certain intangible components that drive you to be a great athlete and a successful. It can be a great athlete, it can be a successful business person, it can be a great human being, and some of those things are intangible.
Brett, I've watched you guys in action, and it's unbelievable. Tell people where they can find you. You got a website so they can learn more about BAM testing?
Yeah, BAMtesting.com. And again, we run testing for 21 sports right now, standardized testing. We're certainly working with athletes, trying to give them a benchmark or a baseline to find out where they are so they know how to get to where they want to be. They got to set a goal and move forward. And with certainly things have changed for us, but COVID kind of drove us to develop a new virtual platform. So now I'm able to test athletes virtually. So if anybody's interested in that, we're ready to go, and we can get yourself some numbers and a place to start with your athletic career on that. It's open to all athletes from basically from 11 to whatever you want to be. It's about finding out where you are.
Brett, thanks so much. And sorry to Mike on the audio issues there. Brett, thanks for all you do, and we hope to see you in person there this April.
Well, I hope to be there, but I don't know if you'll enjoy me. But it's all good. I appreciate that. Yeah, no, we're all looking forward to get back, and we greatly miss Portsmouth. It's just been it's one of the great, unique sporting events that people don't know about it. Like I said, I've been there for 11 years, and the stories and the people you see, it's unique in sports. It really is.
Yeah, well, you know how time somehow binds us. We realized the first time we saw each other at the PIT that I had first seen you when you were at the University of Kentucky, and I was there in Lexington as a TV sports anchor, and then along the way we were together in Dallas, and here we are again. So it's a small, tight fraternity out there.
Oh, sports can be a very small world. Yeah.
No, it's amazing. Yeah. Brett, thanks so much for joining us indeed. And that was Brett Brungard and Mike Brungard. We're sorry we couldn't hear more from Mike. I'm going to bring in Mike Morris again, the chairman of the PIT tournament. Going to bring in Ryan Blake and Chris Ekstrand as well. And Guys, one of the fun things each tournament is to be able to vote for those awards, but you still know in your mind that maybe you could prognosticate who might have been the award winner. So who might have come out as the 2020 tournament MVP?
Well, I think one of the most versatile players at Portsmouth, and probably one of the better players that'll go in the first round is Desmond Bain from TCU. He's got a great motor, plays both ends of the floor, great instincts, shoots it well from deep, over 42%, 6 boards, 1.5 steals. That would be my guy.
Chris, I think you're muted. I'm going to unmute you there. Nope, you got to unmute yourself.
Unmute. Sorry about that. Yeah, when we were dealing with Mike's audio issue, I tried to mute myself to see if it was me. But no, what I was going to say is Grant Riller from Charleston is the type of player who often gets in that MVP conversation simply because he has the ball in his hands so much during the tournament. And when you don't have a coach of your college barking in your ear telling you to pass the ball, a guy like Riller, I think, he could fill it up. Certainly has had some really high scoring games, but he's the type of guy who could put out a points, assist, double very easily in a Portsmouth game where, the tempo is up. So I think Riller, who also, along with Desmond Bain, is likely to be drafted, would be another candidate to be the MVP.
Well, good. I can't necessarily disagree with you, but it would have been fun to see because big men have won the MVP so many times, whether Killian Tilly could have done it or not. And, when he put up double-doubles and points and rebounds every night, that would have been fun to see. And so that could have been a distinct possibility. So I'm going to go with him, just go with somebody different.
Sure.
Guys, before we go to the next one, I have to throw in one thing. By watching the flow of the games, it's very interesting because to watch players evolve through the course of the tournament if they get a chance to play numerous games, because they kind of find a way that they've got to find a way to insert themselves, just because the flow of the game in sometimes is just a little bit different, and you're not going to be the same star status as you may have been on your own team.
Yeah, when I speak to the players at the beginning of the tournament, I get them together, I go through the speech, and I tell them to get together and try to learn from each other, to try to gel as quickly as possible, so that not only that they will win, but they'll also will be able to show the decision makers that they can play with other players and new players and to play to win. And I think that if you're playing to win and you're playing both ends of the court, then you're able to show the decision makers that you know how to play.
Guys, let's bring up the all defensive player. It is a category that's very important. Chris,
yeah, I would say that one of the players who we noticed during his entire collegiate career as an outstanding defender, who can defend both small guys and big guys, would be Dwayne Sutton from Louisville. This is a guy who was not a high recruit, started at UNC Asheville, was outstanding there, and was able to work his way to Louisville. But at Louisville, even there, they had a couple of guys who were, the de facto scorers, like Jordan Nwora, who will be drafted tomorrow night. And so Sutton found himself on one play, guarding a 6'8", 250-pound guy. And the next play, he's guarding a 6'3", 195-pound, guard who wants to shoot threes or drive to the basket. So he's an outstanding defender. And I think he would have shown his versatility on defense at the PIT.
My choice would have been Mamadi Diakite from Virginia. I think a guy that already has enough energy to make his teammates go to war with him, but he also would have had the backing of the Virginia crowd, because all Virginia players get that little extra boost. But he is that player that, he does all the dirty work, the intangibles, and makes that difference on the defensive end.
I'm glad to see that we disagree again, because I have two other guys that I would hate to have guard B. One would be Jimmy Witt from Arkansas. I would not want that guy anywhere near me. And then Trey Scott from Cincinnati would have been another one that's been really fun to watch him D up the big guys. So I'm going to go with 2.
Not a bad. I'm glad you don't all agree. Guys, let's move to another one. How about tournament sleeper pick?
Well, to go back on Mike's point, I mean, that's how deep this field is and that we get every year. I mean, there's guys that can open up doors to get that chance to make a team. One of the guys, my sleeper, is more of a guy I really wanted to see really bad because he was from a small school. Is Keith Braxton from St. Francis, PA. He's a big point guard who was the 2019 Conference Player of the Year, and he was first team this year to teammate Isaiah Blackman. And Blackman wouldn't have been the Player of the Year if it wasn't for his teammate Braxton. But he's a big guard that plays both ends of the court. He's athletic. He's just the type of guy that I wanted to see how he would match up to the high-caliber players or the high-profile players and see how he would react. And I think a lot of the teams that I talked to, including his coach, they want to see him at the point. They say he's a true point guard, and we want to see if he could prove that. Last season, he shot the season before, he shot 44% from behind the arc. He only shot 32% this year. We wanted to see how he could do from beyond the NBA line and how he could play in the half court and in transition.
Mike, why don't you go next this time?
Yeah, my sleeper would have been Anthony Lamb from Vermont. Vermont stepped up and played some bigger schools this year. Lamb played well against all those teams. I think he really would have going to be a sleeper. I thought he was going to really represent himself well against good competition at the PIT.
One guy that not a lot of the NBA teams saw unless they came to a particular game against Duke at the beginning of the season is a guy named Kevon Harris from Stephen F. Austin. I happened to be, just by chance, happened to be at Cameron Indoor Stadium the night that Stephen F. Austin came in and beat Duke at Duke, which was a really shocking way to start the college basketball season. But Kevon Harris is a guy who's about 6'5", strong player, able to do a lot of different things on the court. In that game where they beat Duke, the point guard on his team got in foul trouble. He's usually like a 2 or a 3 man, and he ran the point in the second half against Duke, and in the second half had 0 turnovers against Duke, and they ended up winning the game. So it was a crazy game. He made an outstanding play at the end of the game to get his teammate a layup just before the buzzer. But Kevon Harris is a guy who played well the whole season, not just in that one game against Duke. And he was my sleeper because not a lot of people knew about him.
It's a good one. Guys, you just continue to impress me with the knowledge right off the top of your head there. How about the what do we call other than the word grit for that guy that just has something, the toughness?
Yeah, we had a lot of players this year that, and when we think grit, we think extra effort, we think defense, running the court, and we had a lot of those. And I think with my defensive player of the year, D. Keiti was my guy.
Mike?
Well, I'm gonna go kind of out of the box here a little bit because not only was he gritty, but he was a winner. And so Anthony Cowan at Maryland, whatever they needed, he did. Make a big shot to win the game, make a big defensive play near the end of the game, get a big rebound. He's winner. He's a winner to me, and he was gritty for a little guy. He was tough, and so I'm going to go with him.
One guy we hadn't mentioned so far, Freddie Gillespie from Baylor, was sort of one of these, out of nowhere kind of stories. As a senior last year at Baylor, he was not well known by a lot of the NBA scouts, but boy, after the first few games of the season, everybody knew who he was. And he's a big guy who's the profile that the NBA looks for these days. He's not just a muscle guy who pushes people out of the way, but he's a very athletic guy, has length, will block shots, will dunk drop-offs. He's a guy who can do a lot of the things that they look for energy guys with size to do in the NBA. And he has plenty of grit on both ends.
Guys, that's some fantastic points there. And you know, tomorrow night, we only see just a portion of how important drafting is for the NBA teams, right? I know it's just a short 2 rounds, and we probably wish it would go longer, but really some of the hardest work goes on after those 2 rounds, right, guys?
Yeah, this would be a good year for us to have a couple of extra rounds, just the NBA team, so they could get some, secure some of those players. It's going to be interesting, in this year's draft because, many of the NBA teams relied on early in-person scouting, but of course during the offseason they went to video and analytics. They were able to get some in-person workouts and stuff, but the Portsmouth this year, whether or not they make or get drafted, I think a lot of them will be called up to training camp because a lot of the veterans right now are already playing that are playing in Europe right now, and the players that are sticking around, like the Portsmouth players, they've got this. Now, there's a few players that have gone overseas already that do have NBA out clauses. However, they're not going to leave a paid position to go to training camp. But we're going to see a lot of these players in training camp.
Yeah, I really liked what Ryan said. I think that this year is a year of strange opportunity because of the short turnaround from the NBA season that feels like it just ended to the NBA season starting up again with training camp on December 1st. So it's going to be a little bit different, and it's a point well taken that some of the guys, they had a nice offer in Europe and decided to take it, won't be available for NBA training camps, and some of these players who might have been just a step below, who weren't going to get invited to an NBA training camp will. And some of them will run with that opportunity. I mean, last year we had Terrence Davis from Mississippi come into the PIT, and nobody had him on any draft boards. And, he wound up not only making the roster of the Toronto Raptors, but playing a good deal, a good role for them. He played about 12, 15 minutes a game as a rookie, a guy who was completely, off the draft board. So it can happen. And a lot of these players are going to have that opportunity this year.
Go ahead, Mike.
I was just going to say that it's kind of unusual as well because usually we get to watch the guys from the PIT in the summer league, and there is no summer league. So it's going to make it even tougher for these NBA teams of how they're going to pick these guys to get to a training camp now who didn't have that opportunity. So, yeah, it's really going to be interesting to watch. I agree with Ryan and Chris. There's going to be quite a few guys who've got a shot. And, they're on that borderline, and just what they can make of themselves when they get there. So it's going to be interesting to watch.
Guys, if you can hang here with me, I'm going to go off a little bit because Mike Brungard has been waiting there, and I believe his audio is fixed because as you guys well know, Mike knows what it takes to get that NBA player to the next level physically. Mike, can you hear us okay now? What do you want to share with us? Can you? Oh, nope. We're going to have you unmute your mic there, first of all, Mike. There you go.
I said, first off, I was getting so much feedback earlier that I thought, I'd made my wife mad again or something like that. Yeah, I think Brett did a good job of covering the overall aspects of the NBA body. But, it comes in many shapes and sizes. And from the round mound of rebound to like a Dennis Rodman. So you've got this little ball of fire and fury in Barkley, but then you got this lengthy, muscular kid in Dennis Rodman. You get the same thing. You get height, like with the Spud Webb and the Nate Robinsons, and then you have a Wilt Chamberlain or a Yao Ming. I mean, it's a tremendous disparity. But the key to the whole thing is that they all exhibit those traits that we're testing right there, which is speed, agility, power, and strength to get them through the season also. So it's a lot of combinations there that help make someone who doesn't look like, Charles Atlas, which Charles Barkley doesn't, but they manage to get the job done because they're movers. They know how to use their leverage. They know how to use their power, their positioning, and everything like that, and they know how to play. And so consequently, the NBA body can be many different things. But I think it has to incorporate a lot of those things that we test right there. That's what we're looking for. And then, just another thought here as I heard some of these guys talking is, GMs love this one type of body, which is this person's got some height, but they've also got all this length, this huge wingspan. And they've got big hands, because a quarter of an inch on a hand can make a deflection in a big game. And so all of these factors come into play. And then the final factor was, how do we keep them healthy through the season? And that's a strength factor and a conditioning factor that has to be developed. They have to develop a strong strength base that allows them to compete and move and do these different types of things. They've got to have muscular balance, essentially, in their bodies so that they can survive a season. And the ones that don't usually don't survive a season. Now, PIT guys tend to survive very well because they're more mature coming in, they're older, and they've been in a program for 4 years where they've had a really good strength coach that's taken them from, being that 18 or 19-year-old that went into the draft. He's developed their NBA body for them as they've gone through college, and they're hitting the ground running that way.
Mike, with all the strides that has been made in terms of equipment and technology and nutrition and everything, is it fair to say that guys now are different? It makes it so tough to compare guys of different eras or whatever. Has it really changed the game?
Well, the body hasn't changed. Okay, in other words, strength is still strength, power is still power, and are guys a little bigger and faster and stronger today because of programs? Probably. But I tell you, Will Chamberlain could play in any era. There's guys that could transcend into any era, and they had bodies that were for the ages, I guess. So I don't know if you can really lay it down just that way. I think that maybe they're more conscious of trying to take care of their bodies today, both nutritionally, recovery, all of these different sciences now that we know help a person. But the truth of the matter is, I think athletes in the past were pretty incredible.
Guys, any final thoughts on that subject?
Did a good job, Mike.
Well, Mike, thanks so much. You and Brett do a great job. Thank you for joining us back in here. What I want to do right now, Ryan, stay with me. I'm going to bring you right back in. Chris, I'm going to bring you right back in. Mike, I'm going to leave you in here because you are the PIT chairman now, but Malin Parker was the PIT chairman for 27 years, and Malin passed away on March 28th, and he will be sorely missed by so many. And Mike, I knew you'd be able, because you had been around for so many years, to be able to talk about Malin's legacy.
Oh, I count a privilege to talk about Malin. What a man. He played in the first PIT in 1953. And so he was on the first, when they formed this, mid-70s, formed this first executive committee, they called it. That's now the board of directors. He was on that first group. And then he became chairman in 93 and was until he passed back in March. So, yeah, it's been a tough year for the PIT, not be able to have the tournament. And then within a few weeks after that, losing Malin was very difficult, and so I'm just honored to be able to even try to get in his footsteps. He's just a legend. He's a Southern gentleman to the T, who loved people, loved basketball, but more than anything, he loved Portsmouth, and he always said, "This is more than a basketball tournament, because we do so much for the community. We make contributions to the community. We bring financial impact to the community with the tournament, and just everything about the tournament benefited the city of Portsmouth, and he loved his hometown."
Guys, I brought you all back in because you spent a lot of years and a lot of time with Malin.
Yeah, Mike. Malin was that Southern gentleman. He was the perfect guy for the spot, the old school guy who would go pick up the tickets and distribute, go to the sponsors, gather around the volunteers to help, just to make things gel. I mean, a true leader. One of my great memories, well, so many, but I just enjoyed getting off the plane knowing that I'll be greeted by Malin, and the committee and us will go to a restaurant, Brody's or whatever, and we'll get together. And he brought us all together.
Yeah, we're going to break bread.
Break bread. That's right. And that was great. I mean, he's truly going to be missed. He did a wonderful job. I think he mentored Mike well, and I think Mike's in a perfect position to take this many years past that. So we're lucky. We were lucky to have him.
Chris?
If I could add one thing, it's interesting because the Southern gentleman part, I mean, I talked to him 2 or 3 times a week for 25 years. And every time I talked to him, he said, "How you doing, Mr. Morris?" And I'm like, I'm 30 years younger than you are. Just call me Mr. Morris. And that's just who he was.
Yeah, the thing that I would like to get across about Malin, there's so many wonderful things about him. He was a wonderful basketball man, but he was just a wonderful guy. He was a terrific human being. He's the kind of person that you can say honestly that you're proud to know him. And I was proud to know him for these last 25 years. But the one thing I would say is he was the conduit that made the PIT go. And the spirit of volunteerism, whether it's picking up the players at the airport, getting the per diem ready in the hotel, making sure the event in the gym went off on time, making sure that the scorebook was taken care of, and the timer was working, and the scoreboards were working. He tied together everything, and there wasn't any detail that was too small that Malin didn't care about. He cared about everything involving the PIT, and he involved himself in everything that involved the PIT. But that spirit of volunteerism, without which the PIT can't exist, because it's a nonprofit. The money that they do take in goes to scholarships and to local, helping organizations like the United Way and so forth. But Malin is just one of those people that Mike knows that he has big shoes to fill. But, the thing about Malin is, in all the years I went to Portsmouth, I never heard one person say one bad thing about Malin Parker. He's just such a great person. Everybody loved him. Whether it was somebody who barely knew him or somebody who knew him for 60 years, everybody loved him.
When we first came there in 2011, kind of the new kid on the block, and Malin was great. And immediately you felt like family. And, for the next 10 years, 11 years after that, I was on the road 300 days a year. I would get a phone call from Malin every month, and he'd call me and say, "Where's Brett? What part of the country in? What are you doing? Who are you testing?" And he was just a wonderful human being. You always look forward to hearing from Malin, and he was genuinely excited about where you were, what you were doing. And then, Mike, Mr. Morris, I'm going to throw down a challenge to you every year. The first thing we do after finals is we come to the post the tournament celebration, and he'd have a hat waiting for me. All right.
No pressure, Mike.
I've got 10 of them. I want the next one. Okay.
Keep that tradition going.
There we go.
Mike Brungard.
Well, as everything that's been said is, obviously my impression too. And Malin was the kind of guy that made you feel like you're the only guy in the room a lot of times. He's just very, you always felt special around him. But I think the true measure of Malin was, I think I had a couple conversations right before he passed. And he's struggling. He's having a hard time breathing. He can't get out of bed. He can't do the things he wants to do. And yet Malin's still Malin. He's still talking to you just like, don't pay any attention to this stuff. But, we're just going to keep moving on, trucking on. And so what can you say? Very few of us can ever, meet that type of a standard.
One thing, if I could add, it was interesting with Malin. He loved new things, trying to discover new things. We tried for 15 years to get him a cell phone and get him email, and he would not do it. But he loved all the new technology that Brett would bring or that somebody else would bring to say, "Ooh, how's that work? How's that work?" But he wouldn't use a cell phone. And it was just, and finally, like the last 5 years, we finally got him a smartphone and he started using it. And he, oh, wow, this thing has internet on it. I didn't know how that worked. And so it was only the last 5 years that he really figured out email and internet and a smartphone. But he was always looking for what's that new thing out there? How can we use whatever's new? I'm interested in finding out about it. And how do we even apply that some way to the PIT? And so even though he didn't understand it, he knew we needed it. And he said, "Tell me about it, and let's do it." So he was unique in that way, being so old school, but yet I'm willing to learn, but only I don't learn myself. I'm willing to learn so we can use it in the PIT. And so, yeah.
Hey, can you use that same influence to get Extract a smartphone?
Yeah, instead of a flip phone. Yeah.
Well, it sounds like, Mike, that Malin would have appreciated something new, like we've tried right here, right?
Absolutely. He was fascinated by this. He'd been at home watching this, going, "Oh, this is great. He'd have loved this."
Yeah, a digital platform where we can still honor a tournament that did not gather in person this year. We played it out virtually. Well, guys, I think I know you would all think that Malin would say carry on, and so let's carry this tradition on. We'll do more of this as we lead up to next year, and hopefully we'll be all back together again. Ryan, I have to say to you personally, as memories come back, when I was a young sportscaster in Lexington, Kentucky, doing a daily sports talk show, there was two guys that I could always count on to come on with me at any time on a sports talk show. Your dad and Dick Vitale just never said no to me for long sports interviews on the radio. So I appreciate that as well. Guys, It's a pleasure to see you. We do it this way. For folks that have watched, thank you so much. You'll be able to watch it again if you tuned in late on the Portsmouth Invitational Tournament, the PIT website, or on the PIT Films YouTube channel as well. Gentlemen, thanks. I hope to see you soon, okay?
Thanks, Steve.